The moon hung heavy in the night sky, casting an eerie glow upon the decrepit house by the lake. Mark, Sarah, and Emily had come to this remote place with a dark purpose in mind. They were bound by a morbid curiosity that led them to the edge of the unknown. Mark, the adventurous leader of the group, had convinced his two friends to join him in a sinister endeavor. The house had a sinister reputation, rumored to be a place where secrets and dark energies were trapped. It was said to be the dwelling of malevolent spirits and the site of a gruesome murder that had never been solved. Inside the house, the air was thick with trepidation. Armed with candles, incense, and a weathered book filled with incantations, they gathered in the dimly lit living room. The pale moonlight filtered through tattered curtains, casting eerie, dancing shadows on the walls. Mark, his voice unwavering, began to chant the ancient incantations. The ritual was supposed to summon the malevolent spirits lurking in the house, promising those who dared to invoke them unimaginable knowledge and power. Emily, the skeptic, exchanged nervous glances with Sarah, who was fueled by a fascination with the supernatural. As Mark's incantations reached a crescendo, the room seemed to shift. The temperature plummeted, and a heavy silence settled over them. Emily's skepticism wavered, replaced by an unsettling feeling of unease. She glanced at Sarah, who appeared equally unsettled. But as the final words left Mark's lips, there was no dramatic revelation, no ghostly apparitions, and no unearthly presence. The room remained eerily quiet. Disappointment washed over them as they realized that their attempt at magic had seemingly failed. Maybe it was just an old legend, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah nodded in agreement. Perhaps it was all in our heads. Let's just go back to town. Mark frowned, but eventually gave in. You're right. Let's pack up and leave. They began to extinguish the candles and gather their belongings. The initial sense of anticipation and excitement had given way to disappointment as they prepared to leave. Little did they know that the true horrors of the house were yet to reveal themselves. As night descended upon the lake, the house came alive with malevolence. Shadows writhed in the corners of the rooms, whispers echoed through the hallways, and the air grew colder, as if the very walls of the house were closing in on them. Emily's skepticism had turned into fear, and Sarah's fascination had turned into dread. Each of them retired to separate rooms, each room more unsettling than the last. Mark settled into a room adorned with a massive antique mirror that seemed to reflect not just the room but something more sinister. As he gazed into it, he saw fleeting glimpses of ghostly figures, their eyes empty and hollow. Down the hall, Sarah lay on an ornate four-poster bed. The canopy above her seemed to sway on its own, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She heard faint whispers in an unfamiliar language, and her heart raced as the room grew colder with each passing moment. In the room farthest from the others, Emily sat on the edge of a creaky, moth-eaten bed. Her attention was drawn to an old, dusty portrait on the wall. The painting depicted a family from another era, their faces twisted in anguish. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the eyes of the figures in the portrait were following her every move. As the hours ticked away, the paranormal activity escalated. Mark's room was plagued by disembodied voices that seemed to beckon him closer to the mirror. Sarah's bed shook violently, threatening to toss her onto the floor. Emily's room was plunged into darkness as the candles extinguished themselves one by one. Terrified, the three friends rushed out of their rooms and into the dimly lit hallway, where the shadows seemed to dance and writhe. It was then that they heard a haunting melody, as if a ghostly pianist was playing a macabre tune. They followed the eerie music down a narrow staircase that led to the basement. The melody grew louder and more hypnotic, drawing them deeper into the bowels of the house. At the foot of the stairs, they found a door slightly ajar. With trembling hands, Mark pushed the door open to reveal a chamber filled with flickering candles and a grand piano, its keys moving on their own accord. A spectral figure dressed in tattered clothing sat at the piano, its fingers gliding across the keys with an otherworldly grace. The figure turned to face them, and their blood ran cold as they beheld its ghastly visage. Hollow eyes stared out from a pale, emaciated face, and its lips twisted into a malevolent grin. It was the spirit of a pianist who had met a tragic end within these very walls. In a voice that echoed through their souls, the pianist spoke, "You invoked us, and now you shall never leave." The room grew colder, and the candles flickered wildly. Mark, Sarah, and Emily huddled together. The room grew colder, and the candles flickered wildly. Mark, Sarah, and Emily huddled together, realizing the true horror of their situation. The house had been awakened, and its malevolent spirits were now determined to keep them as permanent residents. As the ghostly pianist resumed its haunting melody, the group knew they were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. Each room held its own terrifying aspect, and escape seemed impossible. Then, as the night wore on, the house itself seemed to offer a chilling revelation. In the basement, hidden beneath a dusty sheet, they uncovered a grisly sight, the decomposing remains of a body. It was the corpse of the long-lost owner of the house, the victim of a gruesome murder that had remained unsolved for decades. The realization struck them like a bolt of lightning. The dark energies that permeated the house were not a result of their failed ritual. They were a manifestation of the lingering pain and malevolence of the murdered soul. The house had become a cursed vessel, and they were now its prisoners. Haunted by the relentless spirits, Mark, Sarah, and Emily were doomed to wander the house's horrifying rooms for all eternity. Their ill-fated curiosity and their ill-conceived attempt at magic had sealed their fate in this nightmarish realm, where the true source of terror lay buried within the house itself.